If you're wondering why so many all-wheel drive Hondas, including mine, seem dead set on flaunting an obnoxious fender or hood exit exhaust, you're not alone. Hondas get a bad rap for being the noisy kid on the block, and they either back it up by being absurdly fast, or in my case, just get laughed at for apparently being slow enough to get gapped by a UPS truck. Most Hondas and many low clearance cars in general have a central tunnel down the middle of the car to route the exhaust to the back while maintaining ground clearance. But when you convert to all-wheel drive, that tunnel gets used for the drive shaft, which leaves nowhere for the exhaust pipes to go except, you guessed it, out the front. There is a better solution to this, but I've always known it would cost a pretty penny, and so I avoided it for as long as possible. As a side note, if you're curious about what all has gone into building this car, check out my last video here, which recently blew up thanks to all of you, and goes into all the details including the engine, all-wheel drive conversion, and even the corner weights. Also, make sure to subscribe if this kind of stuff is right up your alley. Due to the limitless variations in chassis and engine combinations in Hondas, there are currently 0 aftermarket plug-and-play options that I know of for an all-wheel drive compatible full exhaust system. When I was building this car and looking for exhaust solutions around 2021, I had 2 options. I could either cut a hole in the hood like most people and deal with a permanently oily windshield, or I could be a little different, add an extra crumple zone, and send it out the fender. So that's what I did. I ordered a fender exit exhaust from Meyer's Competition, mocked it up, and took a 4-inch hole saw to my perfectly good passenger side fender. It gets a lot of looks and tons of comments. The only problem is, it's loud. I wear earplugs when driving it around town, and when chasing the limiter on the track for 20 minutes at a time, my ears still end up ringing even with foam earplugs and a helmet on. Mixed in with the "dude, this thing rips" comments are an equal number of Minnesota nice complaints from both spectators and event staff, like this guy. Even though I'm usually saving the ear-splitting VTEC cracks for the track, I sometimes can't help myself when I'm out on the streets. With a car like this, how can you resist? Even so, I still find myself avoiding taking the car out for drives when I otherwise would, just because of the noise. Being somewhat of an introvert, I always feel a little uncomfortable attracting that much attention to myself on public roads, and find myself constantly wishing I had a stealth mode. Since this car is quite literally purpose-built to be driven hard and put away wet, letting it sit in the garage for too long never sits well with me. Lucky for me, I recently found a local fabricator who happens to be a fellow Honda head and was willing to create a full exhaust system with the specs I wanted for a reasonable price. I'll put his information in the description below, so look him up if you're in the Minneapolis area and need a solid fabricator who does some damn fine work. To meet my ideal conditions, the exhaust system needed to be all stainless, no lower than the oil pan, and as quiet as possible. There's a T off the header I previously had welded on last year that directs the exhaust downwards, upstream of the cutoff valve, and it's been capped and waiting ever since. It's 2.5 inches in diameter by design, since I knew I'd be going with 2.5 inches for the whole system eventually. And before that one guy saunters on down to the comments to tell me how much better a K-Series does with a 3-inch, to that I say, I think we got it covered. The main priority for this part of the system is staying under the radar when all I want to do is roll my windows down and cruise. When I'm at the track and some yahoo wants the smoke, I can open the dump valve with a click of a button, whip up all 210 horsepower and let her rip tater chip. To start off, the fabricator put together a custom downpipe that comes off the header, connected it to a flex coupler with V-band fittings, then added an adapter to go from round to oval. Being all-wheel drive, in order to maintain reasonable ground clearance and still use bigger than stock pipes, the only way to go is oval tubing. This is 2.5 inch oval, which is a slight misnomer used to avoid confusion when comparing it to round tubing. It's actually 3 inches wide and 1.75 inches tall, which gives it the exact same cross-sectional area as 2.5 inch round. The oval pipe snakes along as close to the underside of the frame rail as possible and barely comes down lower than the viscous coupler, which is exactly what the doctor ordered. As it gets to the rear of the car, it transitions back to 2.5-inch round and goes into a vibrant, ultra-quiet resonator, which is absolutely necessary to take the majority of the harshness out of the exhaust note. After the resonator, we've got a tight fit going up and over the axle with a removable section of pipe secured with V-bands for easy removal. It's a good thing we stuck with 2.5-inch here because fabricating a 3-inch pipe to go over the axle without any contact at full shock compression would be a hell of a chore if it's even possible, and wasn't something I felt was worth it for my application. Since this car spends a lot of time ripping around the track at full tilt with the fender dump wide open, there wasn't much point in the extra expense and hassle of trying to fit a 3-inch system. Capping it off in the rear is a Megan Racing universal short muffler that maintains the 2.5-inch diameter with a straight-through design and fits just right in the limited space under the rear bumper. I may put a tip on it, but then again I may not because it just looks kinda classic and understated the way it is. But let me know what you think in the comments. The final result is a pleasant, mellow idling exhaust you barely notice that opens up with an aggressive but very tolerable note at full tilt. I definitely don't need earplugs anymore when the valve is closed, and it just makes the whole street driving experience so much better. Here's a few different sound bites to give you a little taste. You can check out the description below for a link to my public parts list if you want to see how much it costs to have this fabbed up, but after driving the car with an open header for the last few years, I can tell you it was worth every pretty penny. There's 14 hours of work into this system from the downpipe to the muffler, and it definitely shows. It's pretty rare to see an all-wheel drive Civic on the street with the full exhaust, let alone a valved one, so I'm really stoked with how it turned out. If you like this video, toss me a thumbs up on your way out, and if you want more clean Honda vibes in your life, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, catch you on the next one, and maybe I'll see you out there. Take it easy.